I am Elena, paralegal, legal assistant. Understand the law, but have no voice yet. My husband's parents forced me to borrow 25 million from my grandfather. But my grandfather revealed he had been cheated by my husband's family in an investment deal, causing my brother to commit suicide due to debt. My grandfather made a proposal if I agreed to cooperate in a long-term plan to expose them. He would not only give me 25 million, but also change the entire will. The story is about the journey of legal battles, contract terms, and my transformation from a forced girl to the one who actively signed the final contract. If you love real-life stories, chilling revenge, and dark family secrets, hit that subscribe button now. You're about to step into a world where the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. I always thought the worst conversations of my life would happen in hospital corridors or funeral homes. Those moments when grief hits like a blunt force, and there's nothing you can do except hold your breath and hope not to drown. But I was wrong. The worst conversation of my life happened on a Sunday afternoon in the immaculate dining room of my in-laws' house beneath a chandelier so bright it made everyone's flaws vanish, except mine. I sat at the far end of the long oak table, my hands resting on my lap, palms sweating back straight because the chairs were designed to force you into good posture. The table was set as if for a political dinner. Linen napkins, polished silverware, bone-white plates that probably cost more than my first car. I wasn't sure why they needed such formality for a family meeting. But then again, Harold and Elaine Whitmore never did anything without performing it for some invisible audience. Liam was next to me, his knee bouncing under the table. He wasn't looking at me. He kept staring at his mother. That alone made my stomach twist. He always watched her when something unpleasant was about to happen, as if waiting for instructions. Elaine lifted her wine glass delicately, the ruby liquid catching the light like a warning flare. Elena? She began smiling in that smooth, polished way she had perfected throughout decades of charity, galas, and cocktail fundraisers. I'm glad you could make time for us. This is important. I forced a small smile. You said it was urgent. Oh, it certainly is. Harold cut in his deep voice, filling the room like a judge delivering a verdict. He sat at the head of the table, shoulders squared, cufflinks glinting. We've been discussing the future, Liam's future. My husband straightened, trying to look confident. My tech startup is at a critical stage, he said. Rehearsed. One big investment could push us over the edge. I'd heard this speech 100 times. His app idea had changed so many times, I wasn't sure he remembered the original concept anymore. Every few months, he needed just a little more funding to keep things running, and every time his parents bailed him out, until now, apparently. Elaine placed her wine glass down with a soft clink. We believe the best source for this investment is your grandfather. My heart sank. My grandpa, why? Because Harold said bluntly, he's a multimillionaire, perhaps a billionaire by now, and he loves you. He's old, he's generous, and he owes the family some support after everything. Everything. My throat tightened. What does that mean? Harold waved a dismissive hand. Old history. The tension between your parents and us. It doesn't matter anymore. It mattered to me. Every time someone mentioned old history, I saw my brother's face pale hollow, broken by the time the world realized he had been swindled in a business deal. A deal that had somehow benefited the Whitmore family. No one ever admitted anything, of course. Everyone just said it was a misunderstanding and the aftermath was tragic, but unavoidable. My brother didn't survive it. But Harold didn't care about that. He never did. Elaine leaned forward, clasping her hands like a benevolent queen. Elena, sweetheart, we need you to go visit your grandfather Henry and ask him for a loan of $2.5 million. The words slammed into me so hard I felt physically pushed back in my chair. A loan, I repeated, for Liam. For your marriage, Harold corrected. My breath caught. What is that supposed to mean? Elaine exchanged a meaningful look with her husband, then sighed as if she were the victim in all this. We adore you, dear. Truly. You're part of this family. But Liam needs this opportunity, and as his wife, you should want to help him succeed. You're asking me to ask an 83-year-old man for $2.5 million, I said quietly, voice trembling with disbelief. Yes, Harold said, and you will. Liam finally looked at me. Baby, it's just a loan. Grandpa Henry loves you. You're his favorite. He's always said he'd help with anything you needed. This isn't what he meant, and you know it, I whispered. His jaw tightened, but he didn't disagree. Elaine took a slow breath, lifting her chin. We need you to do this, and if you don't, perhaps it's best for everyone if this marriage is reevaluated. The air left my lungs. That sounds like an ultimatum, I said, though my voice sounded far away to my own ears. It's not an ultimatum, Harold said coldly. It's clarity. My vision blurred with heat. So if I don't ask him, you want Liam to divorce me? Liam didn't speak. That silence was louder than any answer. Elaine smiled, soft, sympathetic, poisonous. Be reasonable, Elena. You come from a modest background. We've never held that against you. But marriage is a partnership. You need to contribute. Liam has potential, but he needs capital. Your grandfather is the perfect solution. I stared at them, a mix of fury, disbelief, and a slow rising nausea swirling inside me. These people really thought they were entitled to Henry Bennett's money. My grandfather's money. A man who had built his empire from nothing, brick by brick, negotiation by negotiation. A man who had taught me, when I was 6 and trying to sell lemonade on the sidewalk, that money wasn't something you begged for, it was something you earned. I wiped my palms on my skirt, trying to steady my breathing. Why me? You could apply for an official investment or bank financing. We've tried, Liam muttered. But the numbers aren't aligning yet. Because there are no real numbers, I snapped before I could stop myself. Elaine gasped softly, offended. Excuse me, I swallowed hard. I'm a paralegal. I've read every document Liam's brought home. His startup isn't stable. It's not ready for this kind of investment. Harold's expression iced over. Your job is to support him, not critique him. And your job, I shot back, is to protect your son, not shove him into deeper debt and drag me into it with him. A sharp silence cut through the room. Liam's cheeks flushed red. Elena, please don't do this right now. I stared at him. The man I fell in love with. The man who used to bring me coffee after late-night study sessions, who used to hold my hand as if I were the only person in the world who mattered. I searched his eyes for a hint of that man, but all I found was fear. Fear of displeasing his parents. It shattered something inside me. Elaine folded her hands neatly. You will go visit your grandfather this week. You will ask him for the loan, and you will bring back good news because we all know he would never deny you. And if I don't, Liam exhaled shakily. Elena, please don't make this complicated. Harold said it for him. Then Liam will file for divorce. This marriage will not continue without your contribution. My ears rang. My heart beat so loudly I could feel it in my teeth. For a moment, all I saw was my brother's face. All I heard was the last conversation we had before he died, when he told me he wished he had fought harder, spoken up sooner, walked away earlier. Don't let anyone use you, he had warned me. Not even the people who pretend they love you. And now here I was being told I was worthless unless I delivered millions of dollars. I took a slow breath. I didn't cry, I didn't shout, I didn't beg. Instead, I stood up. I'll visit my grandfather, I said calmly. Too calmly. But not for the reason you think. Elaine blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said, picking up my purse, that I will ask him for advice, not money. Harold narrowed his eyes. Don't play games with us. I don't intend to. I looked at Liam one last time. I trusted you. I defended you. I believed in you. But if saving this marriage requires me to sell my dignity, then maybe it's not worth saving. Liam opened his mouth, but no words came out. Good. I walked out of the dining room, heels echoing against the marble floor, past the portraits of Whitmores, hanging like silent judges. My pulse was a drumbeat of fury and grief. My hands were shaking, but my spine had never felt straighter. When I stepped outside, the cold air slapped my cheeks, grounding me. I got into my car, closed the door, and sat in silence. Then I whispered to myself, Grandpa, I hope you're ready, because something tells me this is only the beginning. I turned on the engine and drove away from the house that had never been a home, toward the one man who might help me uncover the truth behind the Whitmores, my brother's death, and the real reason they wanted that $25 million. Toward the only person I could still trust, toward my grandfather. The drive to my grandfather's estate took 3 hours, but it felt much longer. The highway blurred into streaks of gray, the winter sky hanging low and cold like a ceiling ready to collapse. I kept replaying the dinner conversation in my head, every word, a needle sinking deeper under my skin. $2.5 million. Divorce. Your contribution. My hands tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I tried breathing the way my old therapist had taught me. Inhale 4 counts, exhale 6. But the calm never came. The only thing that soothed me was the sight of the tall iron gates that marked the entrance to my grandfather's property, Bennett Estate. I'd grown up spending summers here running barefoot across the lawns, feeding the koi in the pond, listening to my grandfather tell stories about negotiating deals and surviving failures. He never sugarcoated anything. The world will underestimate you, he'd say. That's your advantage. Let them. The gates opened slowly once the guard recognized my car. I drove down the long driveway lined with old oak trees that arched overhead like guardians. The mansion appeared through the branches, grand but quiet, elegant, without being ostentatious. Everything my in-laws were not. I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked to the front door before I could knock it open. Miss Elena Martin, the butler who had known me since I was 4, smiled warmly. Welcome home. Home. The word nearly broke me. Thank you, Martin, I said, forcing a smile. Is he in his study? He's been expecting you, Martin said. He told me to send you straight in. I nodded and made my way down the familiar hallway, each step loosening something tight inside my chest. When I reached the double doors of the study, I hesitated. I had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times on the drive over, but standing here, the weight of everything hit me all at once. I knocked softly. Come in, came my grandfather's deep voice. I opened the door. He was exactly where I knew he'd be, sitting in his leather armchair by the fireplace, glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, a thick legal document in his hands. His silver hair was neatly combed back, and even at 83, he had a presence that filled the room effortlessly. When he looked up and saw me, his stern expression melted. My girl, he said, rising to his feet with surprising agility. Come here. I walked into his arms, and for a second the fragile part of me, the one that had been bruised and ignored and belittled, wanted to collapse against his chest and cry. But I didn't. I straightened and forced a steady breath. I needed to see you. I know, he said. Sit. I sat across from him while he returned to his chair. The fire crackled softly between us. He studied me for a long moment. Your eyes look tired, and your hands. You're twisting them the way your mother used to when she was upset. I stopped immediately, pressing my palms to my knees. I'm fine. He arched a snowy eyebrow. When have you ever lied to me successfully? Heat crept up my neck. Never. Exactly, so tell me the truth. I inhaled deeply. Grandpa? Liam and his parents? My voice cracked and I had to start over. They want me to ask you for a loan. His face didn't change, but the air in the room sharpened. How much? $2.5 million. He blinked once slowly. Just one syllable, but it carried a world of understanding. He leaned back in his chair, fingertips pressed together. And what threat did they give you to force this request? My lungs froze. How did you— Elena, he said gently. They are Whitmores. They never ask. They demand. And they always attach conditions. I swallowed. They said, if I don't get the money, Liam will file for divorce. My grandfather nodded once, as if confirming an equation he'd already solved. I see. I waited for him to react. Anger, disbelief, indignation. But he remained calm, almost too calm. It made me uneasy. Grandpa? I whispered. I didn't come here to ask for money. I came because I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm drowning. He closed the document in his hands and set it aside. Then let me ask you a question. Do you want the marriage? The simplicity of this question stunned me. Did I? For a moment, I pictured Liam as he used to be. Messy-haired, passionate, the boy who wrote music at 2 a.m. and whispered promises into my hair. But those memories were old, faded, worn thin by years of his parents' control and his silence. Silence hurts more than words. I don't know, I said honestly. Then you do know, my grandfather said. If you loved him enough to stay, you would know that too. I dropped my gaze. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. The Whitmores have always been greedy, he said. Ambitious and ruthless. They were the same 20 years ago, when your father trusted them. The same when your brother trusted them. My heart twisted painfully. What exactly happened with them and Dad and with Josh? He turned to me, eyes darker than usual. That story, he said, is one I have avoided telling you because I wanted to protect you. But now, because they have dragged you into their schemes again, it is time you understood. I leaned forward, pulse quickening. Your father invested heavily in one of Harold Whitmore's projects, he said quietly. A project Harold knew was collapsing. He used your father's money to pull his own company out of danger. I felt my breath hitch. When your father confronted him, grandfather continued, Harold threatened him, not physically, financially, legally. He used every connection he had to bury your father while saving himself. Tears prickled my eyes. Dad never told me. He didn't want you to see the ugliness of the world at such a young age. Grandpa's voice softened. He wanted you to grow up believing people could be good. And Josh, I whispered. Grandpa's expression tightened. Josh got involved with a business partner connected to the Whitmores. A shell company disguised as an investment opportunity. He lost all his savings, then his loans, then his hope. A sharp pain stabbed my chest. They killed him. No, my grandfather said firmly. Despair killed him. But the Whitmores built the room he died in. I pressed a trembling hand over my mouth. Grandpa returned to his chair, watching me with the unwavering steadiness of a man who had spent a lifetime negotiating in rooms full of predators. So now he said they want $2.5 million from you. I nodded helplessly. He folded his hands. And what do you want? To never see them again, I whispered. To get out before they destroy me too. His eyes warmed with approval. Good, then we have the same goal. I blinked. He leaned forward. Elena, I will not give the Whitmores a cent. Not now, not ever. But I will help you if you are willing to help yourself. A shiver ran down my spine. What do you mean? I have been waiting, he said, for the right moment to expose them. But I needed someone on the inside. Someone they underestimate. He gestured toward me. Someone like you? My pulse thundered. Expose them how? Legally, he said, thoroughly, permanently. I stared at him, stunned. You want me to help bring them down? I do, he said. And more importantly, you need it. They will keep harming you until someone stops them. I felt as if the floor had shifted beneath me. But how they have power, connections, influence. They'll crush us. A slow smile curved his lips, cold and sharp. I have more. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a folder, thick with documents, and set it on the table between us. What is this? I asked. Evidence, he said. Financial irregularities, fraud shell companies, illegal transfers. Much of it is old, but the patterns continue. These people do not change. My fingers hovered above the folder. You've been collecting this. For 2 decades, he met my gaze, waiting for someone brave enough to finish what your father could not. My throat tightened. Grandpa, I don't know if I'm brave. He shook his head. Courage is not about feeling fearless. Courage is the decision you make when fear is loudest. He placed a hand on the folder. If you participate in this, there will be risk. But I promise you this, you will never face it alone. And when it is over, the Whitmore family will never hurt another Bennett again. I inhaled shakily. What do you need me to do? He smiled softly, but with an edge of steel. We will draft a contract. A contract? Yes, a loan agreement. His eyes gleamed. They want $2.5 million fine. We'll let them think they have it. We'll offer it legally, formally, with terms they won't understand until it's too late. I stared at him, stunned. A trap. A revelation, he corrected. The truth hidden in legal ink. My pulse raced with a strange, fierce mix of fear and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Grandfather leaned back. The question is, Elena, are you ready to begin? I looked at the folder, at my grandfather, at the fire crackling between us. For the first time in years, something inside me steadied. Yes, I said quietly, I'm ready. He smiled like a general welcoming a soldier to the battlefield. Good, he said. Then we start tonight. The rest of that evening moved with the same gravity as a courtroom verdict. Every word had weight. Every decision felt like it would ripple through the rest of my life. After dinner, grandfather led me to his private study. The second one. Not the warm, inviting library with leather chairs and a fireplace, but the back chamber he only used for work that mattered. Serious work. Work he didn't want anyone else to overhear. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper, and every wall was lined with locked cabinets. A single long table sat in the center, stacked with documents so thick they looked like textbooks, each labeled meticulously in my grandfather's handwriting. He gestured for me to sit. "Before we begin drafting the contract," he said, lowering himself into the chair across from me, "you need to understand the landscape. You cannot fight an enemy you cannot see." He opened a folder, one of the thick ones, and slid it toward me. "Whitmore's Financial History, 2002 to 2024. My stomach nodded. "You compiled all of this yourself?" "Of course," he said. "You don't rely on others to gather evidence against your enemies. People can be bought, threatened, or scared away. Paper speaks louder." I opened the folder. The first page hit me like a blow. A diagram of shell companies all connected like spiderweb strands to Whitmore Enterprises. "Some of these are legal," he said, "but many too many exist solely to move money without accountability. Your father invested in one of these branches. Josh invested in another." My throat went dry. I traced the lines with my fingertip, imagining my father at his desk, believing he was making the right decision. I imagined Josh younger than I am now, thinking he was finally catching a break. "These people destroyed my family," I whispered. Grandfather didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned forward. "And now they want to destroy you too, unless you prevent it." I closed the folder and exhaled slowly, grounding myself. "Tell me what to do." A small, approving smile touched his lips. "Good. We begin with the contract." He pulled out a fresh file and opened it. Inside were the early drafts notes he had written while waiting for the right moment to strike. "The Whitmores think they're smarter than everyone else," he said. "But their arrogance is predictable. If we give them what they want, a loan of $2.5 million, they won't question the fine print. They've relied on their entitlement for too long." He slid a blank contract toward me. "Your job is simple, get them to sign this." I stared at the empty lines, imagining Harold and Elaine Whitmore, eagerly scrawling their signatures, oblivious to the trap beneath the words. "What exactly will they be signing?" I asked. "A legitimate loan agreement," he said, "but with strict conditions. Conditions they cannot possibly fulfill unless they reveal the full extent of their financial wrongdoing." My pulse quickened. "Like, what conditions?" "Full disclosure of all assets," he said. "Quarterly financial reports audited by a third party. Confirmation that all past dealings comply with federal law." He tapped the table. "And a clause that states if any misrepresentation is discovered, the entire loan becomes immediately due and they face legal consequences for fraud." I blinked, stunned by the precision. "They'll never agree to that." Grandfather smiled. "Oh, they will. Because we will disguise these requirements as normal loan protections. Remember, they have no idea. I've spent 20 years collecting evidence. They'll sign because they think you're naive, that you're the weak link." I felt something inside me shift, something sharp, something awake. "I don't want to be their weak link anymore," I said quietly. "You won't be." His voice softened. "But you must play the part. If they suspect you're working with me, this plan collapses." I nodded slowly. "So I pretend to convince you, and they think they're manipulating me." "Exactly. And they will underestimate you, Elena. That is your greatest weapon." He handed me a sleek black binder labeled Draft. "This is the preliminary version. We will refine it together." For the next 2 hours, we went line by line through the agreement. I had drafted dozens of legal documents in my work, but never one designed as a trap. Grandfather's mind moved like a chess master, anticipating their reactions, leveraging their weaknesses, burying landmines under polished language. "Here," he said at one point, tapping a clause with his pen. "This one requires all borrowed funds to be used solely for the stated purpose, but they will funnel the money elsewhere as they always do. The moment they do, they breach the contract." "And this," I asked, pointing at another line near the bottom, "that gives us the right to request a financial audit at any time. They will fail it inevitably." "And this one," he smirked. "That's the best part. It states that failure to comply results in the forfeiture of any future claims or defenses. Once they sign, they cannot claim ignorance or mistake." I stared at the words. It felt unreal, like I was sitting in a strategy room planning the downfall of a dynasty. Except this wasn't about power or vengeance. It was about survival. Finally, we finished the initial draft. Grandfather leaned back, removing his glasses. "You did well," he said. "Your mother would be proud." Emotion tightened my throat. Do you think I can actually do this?" He reached across the table and rested a hand on mine. Rare for him, a man who kept affection guarded. "You already are." I swallowed hard. A soft knock interrupted us. Martin stepped inside. "Mr. Bennett, Miss Elena, Mr. Morgan has arrived." My head lifted sharply. "Morgan, as in, your attorney grandfather finished for me?" "Yes, you'll need legal protection while executing this plan." Grandfather stood. "Send him in." Moments later, Morgan walked in. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, sharp mind. I'd worked with him occasionally at the firm, but had never seen him in this environment. Confident, relaxed, speaking to my grandfather like an equal. "Evening," Morgan said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your grandfather briefed me earlier. I have drafts prepared for review, and I'll be acting as your personal counsel moving forward." I blinked. "My personal counsel?" "Of course," Morgan said. "You're about to enter a legal minefield with people who will gladly blame you for everything when things go wrong. You need someone in your corner." Grandfather nodded. "You will not be alone in this." A warmth spread in my chest, strange, unfamiliar. Support. Real support. Morgan opened his briefcase and pulled out a laptop. "I've reviewed the financial networks Mr. Bennett provided. The Whitmores are more vulnerable than they appear. If we push them just enough, they'll expose themselves." "Then let's push," I said before I could stop myself. Morgan smiled. "Good, because you'll be the one delivering the contract." My stomach dipped me. "Yes," Grandfather said. "They will expect you. They will trust you. And they will sign because they believe you are desperate." I exhaled shakily. "I can do that." Morgan studied me for a moment. "Elena, this will require acting, convincing them that you're overwhelmed, that you're being pressured, that you want to save the marriage." My pulse tightened. "I can do that too." "Good," Morgan said. "But be careful, they will test you." Grandfather closed the binder. "Which is why we prepare tonight." The next hour was spent rehearsing. Grandfather played Harold. Morgan played Elaine. I had to respond the way they expected. A blend of fear, guilt, and desperation. It was exhausting and strangely liberating. With each repetition, I felt myself stepping into a new version of Elena. One who could look manipulation in the eye and not flinch. Finally, Grandfather stood. "It's time to rest," he said. "You have a difficult task ahead." "But when should I go back?" I asked. "In the morning," he said. "The sooner they believe the lie, the sooner the truth can begin its work." I closed the binder and held it tightly to my chest. The contract of truth. My ticket out. Their undoing. As I headed toward the guest room, my grandfather called out softly, "Elena?" I turned. His eyes, so sharp, so weathered, softened just slightly. "You are stronger than your father ever was," he said. "Not because you lack fear, but because you refuse to break." A tear slipped down my cheek. "Good night, Grandpa," I whispered. And when I closed my door behind me, I stood in the dark for a long time, letting the weight of everything settle. Tomorrow I would walk back into the lion's den. But this time, I wasn't the prey. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I didn't sleep much. Maybe 2 hours, maybe less. But the exhaustion didn't weigh on me the way I expected. It wasn't the tiredness of defeat. It was the brittle, vibrating exhaustion that comes before a fight you can no longer avoid. I showered, dressed simply. Nothing too elegant. Nothing too confident. If I walked into the Whitmore mansion looking strong, they'd suspect something. No. I needed to look strained. Vulnerable. Like a woman trying desperately to hold her life together. Exactly what they wanted me to be. Before leaving, I found Grandfather in his study, sipping black coffee and reading the news. He lowered the newspaper when he heard me. "You're early," he said. I couldn't sleep. "Good," he said, standing. "People who sleep well before a war don't understand what they're walking into." I managed a small, nervous smile. Comforting. He stepped closer, adjusting the collar of my coat the way he used to when I was a child. "Remember your lines. Remember your posture. They feed on weakness, but they choke on accountability." I nodded. Then he handed me the black binder, the contract, cold, smooth, heavy like a weapon. "Are you ready?" he asked. I inhaled, yes. "Then go," he said softly. "And don't look back until you have their signatures." The Whitmore mansion looked even larger and colder than usual when I arrived. Marble columns, French windows, Manicured lawns that never seemed to have a blade of grass out of place. A monument to perfection and a tomb for truth. The front door opened before I knocked. Elaine stood there perfectly composed in a silk blouse and pearls. She smiled the way all skilled manipulators smile. Warm mouth, cold eyes. "Elena, darling," she said, pulling me into a brief hug that felt more like being scanned for weaknesses. "You got here quickly. I drove straight from my grandfather's," I said, letting my voice tremble slightly. Elaine's smile widened. "Wonderful, come in. Liam and Harold are waiting in the sitting room." Waiting. Like judges waiting for a verdict they already assumed would rule in their favor. I followed her down the hallway, tightening my grip on the binder tucked inside my bag. My heart pounded, but I forced my breathing to stay shallow, anxious but not panicked. I needed to be convincing. The sitting room door was open. Liam was pacing near the fireplace. Harold sat on the sofa, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. They all turned toward me as I stepped inside. "Elena," Liam said, relief flooding his face. "Thank God, I was worried you wouldn't come back." Worried or afraid the financial lifeline might disappear. "Sit," Harold said. I sat. Elaine perched beside him, elegant and expectant. "So Harold began, did your grandfather agree?" I took a slow breath and let it shake. "Yes. But it wasn't easy." Elaine gasped, placing the hand over her heart in exaggerated sympathy. "Oh dear, did he give you trouble?" This woman belonged on a stage. "He wasn't thrilled," I said. "He wanted to understand why we needed the money. He asked a lot of questions." Liam shifted uncomfortably. "What did you tell him? That you needed funds for growth, that your startup was close to breakthrough." I waited just long enough. "He said he needed protection." "Protection," Harold repeated sharply. "Yes," I said. "He agreed to the loan, but only if you sign the contract he drafted." I pulled the binder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. Harold leaned forward like a hawk spotting prey. "Let me see it." Before handing it over, I added, "He insisted all parties sign, including Liam." Liam blinked. "Me, why me?" "Because the money is for you," I said. Harold scowled, but he opened the binder anyway. The sound of the metal rings clicking open felt like the snap of a trap closing. He skimmed page 1, then page 2, then page 3. His brows tightened. "What is all this?" he muttered. Elaine reached for the binder too. "Harold, what's wrong?" Harold didn't answer. His eyes narrowed as he continued reading. "Quarterly audits. Full disclosure. Use of funds. Monitoring legal consequences for misrepresentation." Clause by clause, he was walking deeper into the net. "It looks standard," I said softly. "Exactly as rehearsed. Grandpa said it protects all parties, and he said it was non-negotiable." Harold closed the binder slowly. "This contract is reasonable," I said before he could finish. "Normal. Responsible. He's offering $2.5 million. He wants transparency." Elaine frowned. "Harold, what's happening?" Harold looked at me with something close to suspicion and something closer to fear. "This is not a simple loan agreement," he said. "Of course it is," I said, widening my eyes innocently. "Is something wrong?" He snapped the binder shut. "I need time to review this with our attorneys," he said, standing abruptly. My heart skipped. That was the one thing we could not let happen. "No," I said quickly. "Grandpa said if the contract leaves my hands without signatures today, the offer goes away." Liam's eyes widened in panic. "Dad," Elena, Harold said, his voice icy. "We will not sign anything without legal review." "Then we lose the loan," I said simply. Elaine's breathing quickened. "Harold, we need this. Liam needs this." Liam turned ghost pale. "Dad, there must be a way." Harold glared at me. "What else did your grandfather say?" I forced myself to look small, intimidated. He said he's tired of people taking advantage of the family. He said the only way he'll help is if everything is transparent." Harold's jaw clenched so hard I could hear the grind. Liam looked between us, frightened. "Dad, please? This is everything." "This contract is a trap," Harold snapped. My stomach twisted. He was close, too close to seeing the truth. Elaine shot to her feet. "A trap? Harold, it's a loan from an old man who adores Elena. What trap could there possibly be?" "Look at these clauses," Harold growled. "Audits, asset disclosures, use of funds restrictions, legal penalties. This is not normal for a family loan." I leaned forward, letting my voice crack. "Please, Harold." I begged him to help us. I told him you would never agree if the terms were too strict. I said you were good people. He hesitated. Small, vulnerable, afraid. I let myself tremble. I didn't have to fake that part. I'm trying to save my marriage, I whispered. Elaine's eyes softened. Harold's posture changed slightly. But Liam looked broken. Elena, you're doing all this for us. For you, I thought. For the boy you used to be, but not for the man you've become. Harold exhaled sharply. Fine. Leave the contract. I will read it again. I shook my head quickly. He said the contract cannot stay here without signatures. Harold's face darkened. He cannot dictate. But he can, I said softly. He can withdraw everything. Please, just sign it. If you don't, he'll never help again. Elaine grabbed Harold's arm. Harold, sign it. Liam's voice cracked. Dad, please. Harold's eyes flashed with cold calculation. Then slowly he sat down again and opened the binder. He flipped back through the pages. His fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. He was weighing greed against caution, pride against desperation, power against opportunity. I watched the exact second he made his decision. His shoulders eased, his expression smoothed. He picked up the pen and signed. Elaine exhaled in relief and immediately signed after him. Liam hesitated only a moment before adding his name, eyes flickering toward me with something like gratitude and something like guilt. I swallowed hard. The signatures glistened on the page like open wounds. Harold closed the binder and shoved it toward me. There you have what you came for. Now go and tell your grandfather the funds will be used wisely. I will, I whispered. But we all knew that was a lie. I stood. Liam moved toward me. Elena, thank you for fighting for us. I forced a weak smile. Then I walked out. Every step down the hallway felt lighter, every breath sharper. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but adrenaline. I opened the binder. 3 signatures stared back at me. Legally binding, legally exploitable, legally damning. The Whitmore Empire had just signed its own death sentence, and I was the one who handed them the pen. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are countless real-life betrayals, twists, and revenge stories waiting for you in the next episodes. I didn't drive straight home after leaving the Whitmore mansion. I drove to a quiet overlook outside the city, parked the car facing the endless stretch of skyline, and let the cold wind seep through the cracked window. My hands were still trembling around the binder. 3 signatures, 3 names, 3 confessions disguised as ink. The Whitmores had no idea that they had just handed me the power to unravel everything they had spent decades building. And yet, as the adrenaline slowly drained from my veins, a crushing ache settled into my chest. Not regret, exactly. More like mourning. Mourning the version of myself who had once believed in that family, who had once believed in Liam, but that version of me was gone now. I exhaled, started the car, and drove toward my grandfather's estate. Grandfather and Morgan were waiting in the study when I arrived. The moment I held up the binder, Grandfather's eyes lit with a satisfaction so subtle most people would have missed it. But I knew him. Well done, he said, very well done. Morgan stood and took the binder carefully. May I? Yes, I whispered. He opened it, scanned the signatures, and nodded. Perfect. This is exactly what we needed. What happens now? I asked, trying to steady my breathing. Morgan sat back down, flipping through the pages with a methodical precision only lawyers possessed. Now he said, we enforce the contract. I blinked already. Grandfather answered. You must understand, Elena. The moment they signed, they became liable for the truth, and they are incapable of giving the truth. Morgan added, we will request the first financial documents immediately. They won't be able to produce lawful records. That breach alone is enough to initiate legal action. He looked up at me. What they signed is not a trap in the criminal sense. It is a mirror, and mirrors terrify people who live on lies. A tremor ran through me. Not fear, but anticipation. Grandfather leaned forward. Tomorrow morning, Morgan will send a formal notice. The clock will start ticking. I swallowed and, Liam, Grandfather's expression softened, only a fraction. He made his choices. He aligned himself with the wrong people, and you cannot save a man who does not want to save himself. I looked down at my hands. Deep inside, a truth was forming, quiet but solid. I was done saving him, done shrinking for him, done being the reasonable one while he hid behind excuses. The next 72 hours blurred into activity. Morgan sent the notice. The Whitmores ignored it. He sent a second one. Harold responded, furious, defensive, accusatory. Grandfather responded with calm, lethal precision. 3 days later, The audit team licensed legitimate and fully briefed arrived at Whitmore Enterprises with a court-backed authorization letter. I wasn't present, but Morgan later told me the scene was chaos. Harold shouting, Elaine crying, Liam pacing in shock. Their books didn't match. Their transfers didn't match. Their shell companies didn't match. Their lies finally had to stand in a room full of people who could read them. By the end of the week, federal investigators had been alerted. Not because we wanted revenge, but because fraud is fraud, and a $25 million loan with falsified documentation qualifies as a legal catalyst. I received a single text from Liam the night before everything exploded. Elena, what did you do? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I told the truth. Maybe you should try it. He never responded. When the news broke, a headline splashed across financial blogs first, then local TV stations. I felt nothing at first. Whitmore Enterprises under investigation for financial misconduct. Audit reveals discrepancies in multi-million-dollar records. They weren't arrested, not yet, but subpoenas were issued. Accounts were frozen, investors fled. Public trust shattered. Everything they had used to intimidate me, wealth, reputation, connections, crumbled under the weight of real accountability. That night, Liam showed up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door, but he wouldn't leave. Elena, he shouted from the hallway. Please, I need to talk to you. His voice cracked on the last word. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. He looked nothing like the man I had married. His hair was messy, his eyes red-rimmed, his clothes wrinkled. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. What did you do? He demanded, voice trembling. My father is losing everything. My mother is hysterical. Reporters are everywhere. I didn't raise my voice. They chose this. You tricked us, he said, stepping closer. You made us sign that contract. I didn't make you sign anything, I said sharply. I didn't force you to lie to your investors. I didn't create shell companies. I didn't steal money. Your family did that on their own. He swallowed hard. I didn't know. Yes, Liam, you did. I met his eyes. You just didn't want to know. Silence. A painful, stretching silence. He sank onto the sofa, shoulders shaking. I wanted to protect us, he whispered. I didn't want to lose you. You lost me a long time ago, I said quietly. The moment you let your parents decide what our marriage should be. The moment you threatened me with divorce over money. The moment you chose them over the truth. He buried his face in his hands. I sat across from him, not moving closer, not comforting him. For once, I let him feel the consequences of the silence he had always chosen. Finally, he lifted his head. Tears stained his cheeks. Is there anything left between us? I hesitated, not because the answer was unclear, but because saying it out loud would make it real. No, I said simply, there isn't. His breath hitched. I stood and walked to my desk, pulling out a document. I already signed the divorce papers, I told him. You should too. He looked at the papers with devastation. Elena, I'm sorry. I know, I said softly, but sorry doesn't undo anything. He signed with shaking hands. When he left, he didn't look back. And neither did I. 2 weeks later, the investigation deepened. Charges were filed. Fraud, tax evasion, falsified records. Harold faced the harshest consequences. Elaine's social circle vanished overnight. Liam moved out of state. And me, I moved back into grandfather's estate temporarily while I rebuilt my life. One evening, as we sat on the veranda overlooking the garden, grandfather handed me a thin envelope. What's this? I asked. Your future, he said simply. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a revised will leaving his entire estate and company to me. My breath caught, Grandpa. I don't want— You're not taking anything, he interrupted. You're inheriting responsibility. The Bennett legacy needs someone with honor. Someone who understands loss. Someone who knows the cost of truth. I looked at the paper again, my name written in bold letters. Elena, he said gently. You were not chosen because you are family. You were chosen because you chose yourself. A tear escaped warm against my skin. I looked at him, the man who had taught me strength, resilience, truth, and I nodded. Okay, I whispered, I'll take it. He placed his hand over mine. Good, then your story begins now. That night, I walked outside alone. The air was cool. The estate was quiet. Stars dotted the sky like scattered silver. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar fill the void inside me. Freedom. Not just from the Whitmores, not just from Liam, not just from fear, but from every version of myself who believed I had to earn love by sacrificing my dignity. No more. My life, my choices belong to me now. I took a long breath, lifting my face to the sky and whispered, This is my final contract. Not written on paper, not signed with ink, but sealed in truth. And unlike the Whitmores, I intended to honor it.